Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Seven Sage Law School Admissions Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Baska, Seven Sage Admissions Consultant and Podcaster, and we're recording this in March. And so, that means like April is almost here, which means that you've, hopefully, fingers crossed, received some admissions deadlines, and now you've turned your sights towards deposit deadlines and the actual act of depositing. And that inevitably and annually leads to some questions. Questions like, oh no, what do I do? And that's totally normal because, it's an odd part about any admissions process, whether that be for undergrad or grad, because you're focused so much on the actual process that sometimes you lose sight of the goals, or you just can't believe that you've actually gotten to your goals. Okay, so like for any of these processes, you need to do well in school, and that takes 4 years of high school, 4 years of college, and you're building your resume, and you're studying for that standardized test, and you're researching schools, you're visiting schools, you're attending college fairs, law fairs, you're writing that personal statement and editing it and proofreading it and giving it to other people to read, you're submitting those applications. And as I'm going through this, I'm really sorry if that's giving anyone any traumatic flashbacks to how long this entire process has been. But the point is, again, it's really odd to think that you're coming close to having to actually make a decision. So, it's like the old saying about the dog that chases cars, but then doesn't know what to do when it finally catches one. That's you. You've caught one. But what do you do? So that's what we're going to talk about in today's episode. Like, how do you actually make that final decision? How do you walk through things? How do you organize your thoughts? And so, not to make things overly complicated, but longtime listeners know that, we like being comprehensive here on the podcast. So let's start with some terms first, and also a little bit of a logic flow. Okay, so as far as the terms goes, I've already used some of them. Okay, for example, I've used the term deposit. So what that actually means is you've been admitted to a school, you've received an offer of admission, but now you need to tell the school whether or not you're planning to attend. So what you're actually going to do is fill out a form and usually give them a little bit of money that is now the first payment towards your first tuition bill. Okay. And that's where the term comes from, because we refer to like apartment deposits, depositing for other matters to reserve a seat. Same deal here. This deposit is usually not binding, meaning that you can stay on wait lists, and you may even be able to submit a deposit at more than one school, depending on the fine print of every school's admission letter. But also, I want to really clarify, this is different from enrolling at a school. Enrollment is a technical term which indicates you actually showed up for orientation / the first day of classes. So different universities treat that differently. But the point being, the academic year is about to begin. We are doing a roll call, a head count of everyone that's here. We're reporting that to the Department of Education. So are you here or not? And that's a process that's going to happen in August and September. That's not a process that happens now. So again, you're not enrolling anywhere right now. You're simply depositing at a school. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about canceling. So what that means is that you've been admitted to a school, but instead of depositing at the school, what you're actually doing is you're officially declining that offer. And that's totally normal. That happens. And that's a part of this process too. Additionally, we're going to talk a little bit about maybe having a pending application. What that means is that you've applied to the school, but you're still waiting on a decision. So you haven't been admitted, you haven't been denied, you haven't been waitlisted, you're still just pending. Okay, so let's keep those terms in mind as we enter this logic flow of what to do, how to figure out where to attend and how to deposit and all that. Okay, and let's riff on the whole like retest, reapply, or as some people put on Reddit, R&R strategy. And is that right for you? And I think the first question you want to ask yourself there is, okay, so if I am going to reapply, and let's forget about retesting for the time being, but just reapply, what's going to be different next time? And will that thing make a difference? And now we're entering into this gray area where it's going to be really unique based on your own application. But to give you a couple things to consider, for example, one easy one is, hey, your timeline of when you submitted your application. So for example, did you submit it a little bit later in the admissions year? So this was a year when, if you're a longtime listener to the podcast, if you're a longtime reader of the admissions blog, you've been hearing from us for, as I look at the timestamp on my computer screen, you've been hearing from us for a year, that we thought the admission cycle in the 25-26 admissions year was going to be big. And whoa, hey, we've got some big numbers at the beginning of the cycle. And oh, now we're in December and the numbers are still big, and on and on. So, hey, did you apply in like December, January, February, March? And maybe in another admission cycle, you could apply a little bit earlier. Okay. Also, what was your admission strategy? And now in hindsight, do you feel like that strategy aligned with your resume, with your stats, and with your goals? So let me give you an example. I've worked with a number of people who want to apply to only the T14s. Those are the only schools that they'll apply to. And some of these people have statistical profiles that are underneath where the T14 are presently. Okay, so for example, most of the T14 at this stage have a 171 median LSAT or higher. The lowest is a 170. Berkeley's been at a 170. And their GPA from undergrad is below a 3.9. But these people, bless them, they feel like their resume, the specificity of why they want to attend these schools will help them to overcome their stats. And it will for some people, but also, it's rare. It is not common for a significant chunk of an enrolling class to be low on both the LSAT and the GPA. That's why the medians are where they're at, right? Because they're a balancing point. So was your strategy out of alignment with your profile? In which case, you have two options if you're looking ahead to reapplying. Do you want to change your admission strategy? So for example, my reflection is I can't change my profile. My profile is what it is. So instead of applying to all the T14, I'm going to apply to maybe a couple of those guys, but I'm now going to move my sights down a little bit to schools that are more in line with my statistical profile and with schools where I am far above their own statistical profile. So I'm really going to change my strategy here to be more focused on targets and safeties with a couple reaches. Or can I change my profile? Meaning potentially retesting. So this could be appropriate for those folks who feel like they have a potential of doing a lot better on the LSAT, that's a big hindrance to their admissions process. But you know what? If I change things up, sign up for 7-stage classes, 7-stage tutoring, to give a shameless plug, or I just change my process and take the LSAT another time or another 2 times, I feel like I can add some more points to that score, and that would make a difference. Then it could be reasonable to look ahead to retesting and also reapplying. But also, if you're really kind of confused about things like, gosh, I thought my strategy was good, and when I'm evaluating my application, I'm really not sure what to look for as far as, performing an autopsy on this application or a postmortem on this application where'd it go wrong? As another heads up and as another shameless plug, hey, 7-stage is part of what we do with admissions consulting is that you can have a conversation with us where maybe one of our admissions officers or several of our admissions officers look at your application from this past year and try to talk with you about your strategy, how you present yourself. Is this how you want to present yourself? Here's my takeaway from your personal statement. Is that what you were trying to convey? Oh, and you applied in February? Oh, gosh, that'll change things a little bit. And I'll also admit another way to change your profile is working on that resume. And admittedly, that's not a quick fix. So I don't want to present the LSAT as a quick fix by any stretch of the imagination. But also, we can all catch lightning in a bottle. That's possible. And that can happen on the LSAT. Regarding the resume, that isn't a lightning in the bottle matter. That may take 2 years, 3 years to really build that up. Okay, so be patient on that side of matters. And it's still too early right now. An additional factor is, will next year's admissions cycle be any easier than this cycle? Will it be less competitive than this cycle? It's still too early to say anything about that. However, we already have our first data point of this upcoming admission cycle, which is the percentage of first-time test takers on the February LSAT. Because once we get to February, we start to see the percentage of first-time test takers start to inch up. There are more people who are taking that test looking ahead to the next admission cycle rather than who are taking the LSAT to apply in this current admission cycle. Okay. And that percentage was pretty solid, meaning it's comparable versus where it was last year, meaning looking ahead, it's our first data point to say it's probably not going to get less competitive next year. Our next data point we'll get in April, once we see the final numbers for April LSAT test takers, and to compare that versus last year. If we see that the numbers are steady, or if they even go up a little bit, that's our next data point to say, it's probably not going to be any less competitive to apply in this coming admission cycle. So those are things to keep in mind when you're looking at, gosh, is retesting, is reapplying, is that going to be the right move for me? Or should I continue to consider these offers of admission that I've received for some schools, as we're about to talk about? So the first question in this logic flow is the most basic one. Have you received at least one admit offer, yes or no? If no, man, like, we hear you. It's been a tough year out there, and yeah, but let's acknowledge what you're doing. So if you're in that no category, then the name of the game right now is, if you still have some pending applications out there, you got to be patient. You got to sit tight. If you've submitted and you're still waiting to hear back, that's a toughie. If you're on wait lists, be ready to submit a letter of continuing interest to that or after that particular school's deposit deadline, which, as we're going to discuss in a moment, is likely going to be sometime around either April 1st, April 15th, or April 30th. So, if you want to send something the second week of April, around the 5th or the 7th or the 8th, that's a good general catch-all date. Okay. And then also, you may want to start considering what your plan B is. So if I don't get any offers of admission, if I don't get off any wait lists, what am I going to do? Should I retake the LSAT? Should I change my prep for that? Do I think I can do better on the LSAT? Is the LSAT a moot point? I already rocked out on the LSAT. Okay. But, should I go down that road? Should I shoot for this upcoming admission cycle and reapply? If so, should I change my admission strategy or my application strategy from what I did this past cycle, maybe apply to some different schools? Do I feel like maybe I applied too late? So if I apply a little bit earlier, that'll change things. Do I feel like my applications were generic? So maybe I should do some more research and networking to learn more about schools, or do I really need to take a step back for more than just one admission cycle, maybe work for a little bit longer, build up my resume, but start considering what's that plan B. What are you going to do if you don't get any admissions offers or if you don't get off any wait lists? Okay, so, just heads up for you guys. Okay, but for the people who do have a pending or who do have an offer of admission, okay, if your answer to the question is, yes, I at least have one offer, here's the next question. So have you received all of your decisions yet, or are you still waiting on some decisions? And this is where I see people really getting tripped up the most on Reddit and other message boards. It's things such as, I have 2 offers for my target schools, but I'm still waiting on my dream school. Or, I've been admitted by my clear number 2 school. They've admitted me. They've given me a good scholarship. It's all good. I've also been admitted to my number 1 school, but they haven't given me any information on financial aid. What do I do? Or, I've been admitted at my backup school, and I'm on the wait list at my top choice school. What do I do? Okay, so just please note, we're recording this again in middle of March, so it's important to acknowledge that place in the timeline. Given that's the middle of March, it's now legitimately all right to contact a school where you have a pending application and just ask them about their decision timeline, either for their applications or for financial aid, depending on where you're at in the process. So financial aid, that would be for the person who's been admitted, but they haven't gotten any scholarship information or any financial aid information. It's really okay to communicate to the school that you've been admitted elsewhere, you have a pending deposit deadline with that other school, and you're just checking in to see when you might receive a decision. Now, it's really likely that what you're going to hear is as soon as possible, and we're still working on it. But at least you're going to have the peace of mind that you did your best with outreach. And here, I would recommend a phone call, since you're more likely to get an answer sooner than if you just send a general email to a general email address. And also, you can better control your tone on the phone versus email. And I'd really encourage you. It sounds obvious, but to say the obvious, be friendly, be professional. Try to keep your tamp down your energy if you're like me and sometimes can get a little overzealous on the phone. So, hi, my name is Jake, and I'm an applicant to your law school. Hey, how are you doing today? Oh, wonderful. I'm doing great too. And I'm giving you a call today because I've actually been admitted to a few other schools, and I have some deposit deadlines coming up in early April. And I wanted to ask you guys when I might hear a final decision from you, understanding that things may be pending and it's challenging to give any firm deadlines. I'm just trying to get a sense of matters because, I applied back in November. I applied in December. So hopefully that tone came off professional. It didn't come off anxiety-ridden or like I was really trying to nail anyone down. So again, be friendly, be professional, acknowledge that it's unlikely that they're going to give you a firm date, but at least you can feel confident you've advocated for yourself, okay? Now, a school may give you some information on their timeline. So for example, we will be issuing financial aid notifications on April 3rd, okay? So if they give you some firm information, and if that conflicts with your other school's deposit deadline. So again, in this scenario, hey, we're going to give information on April 3rd about financial aid, but your deposit deadline for that other school is on April 1st. This is a time when it's reasonable to reach out to the school that's admitted you and to politely ask for an extension on your deposit deadline. Schools do and don't like giving extensions on the deposit deadline because on the one hand, they know that this is a big decision and they want you to feel confident about committing. Okay, they don't want to make you feel like you've been rushed into this decision or pressured or pushed into this decision. So that's on the one hand. We're nice people. We want to be accommodating. On the other hand, extensions mess up my ability to look at my wait list, because I have people who are on my wait list and I can't give them any information until I know how my deposits have come in. And also, it's a little bit of an odd request because I'm the school that admitted you. And now you're asking me to wait because of a school that hasn't admitted you? I don't know, man. That's a little bit rough if you stop and think about it. But I will acknowledge if you're asking for only a little more time, and if you can give me a clear date, most admissions officers are going to view that as a pretty reasonable request, and we'll try to work with you on that. However, if you're asking for, to use the technical term, loads more time. So, for example, could you push my deposit deadline back a month? Or if you can't really give me any idea of when you're going to hear this information from another school, that's not going to be seen as a reasonable request. So again, here's a reasonable request. Hi, School X. My name is Jake, and I'm an admitted student. So first of all, I just want to thank you so much for this offer of admission. I really appreciate it. But I wanted to reach out to you because my other top choice school, School Y, has admitted me, but I haven't yet heard back about scholarship information. Now, they've told me that they're going to give me this information on April 3rd. It's obviously past your deposit deadline of April 1st. So I wanted to see if it'd be possible to maybe push my deposit deadline to April 5th, April 8th, just so I can hear back from School Y first. Would that at all be possible? So again, you're given clear dates, you're explaining the situation. It's not vague what you're asking for. The more details, the more definition you can give, the more likely a school will say, sure, that's reasonable. Let's see what we can do to help you. Okay. Now, back in those hypotheticals that I offered a few minutes ago, I've been admitted to my backup school, but I'm on the wait list at my top choice school. What do I do? My strong suggestion is to pretend like the waitlisted school doesn't even exist. Because I think what most people are, when they're asking that question, at least on the Reddit message boards, like, oh my gosh, don't these waitlisted schools know that I have a deposit deadline over here? I think what they're thinking is the waitlisted school will surely be in touch with me with the final decision before my deposit deadline to the school that's admitted me. And that's just not how waitlists work as far as timelines go. So as we've discussed in other podcasts, and as I kind of hinted at a few minutes ago, I can't start reaching out to my waitlist until after my deposit deadline has passed. So if you have a deposit deadline at one school at April 1st and you're on the waitlist at another school, they're not going to be able to tell you any information about whether or not you're, even if they're going to have seats available in their class until after their own deposit deadline passes, either on April 1st, April 15th, April 30th. And even then, Maybe they have 5 seats open after their deposit deadline, but they know that historically, another 15 or 20 open up gradually over the course of the summer as people are deposits from their class are admitted off the wait list at other schools. So this isn't going to be something that you hear back from on March 25th, March 30th, April 5th, etc. This is going to take a little bit of time. So for your purposes as to whether or not you want to accept this offer of admission from this school, pretend the waitlist school doesn't even exist. Okay, don't hold up on depositing potentially at this school just because you're hoping to hear back from those waitlisted schools first. Okay, and to that end, and to transition into the next part of the logic flow, at the end of the day, you have to prioritize the schools that have made an offer of admission to you. You owe it to yourself because these are people who have asked you to the dance. And so now your job is to figure out, who do I go to the dance with? Do I even go to the dance? Which we'll get to in a moment. Okay, so now back to the logic flow. Yes, I've received some offers of admission, and yes, I've received all of my decisions. I know where I'm admitted, waitlisted, denied, nothing's pending, I'm ready to rock and roll. At this point, and also I've received all my scholarship information too. Almost forgot that one. Kind of an important factor here. So yeah, I've received all my scholarship information. Then I think the first thing is just to acknowledge this is all going to be totally subjective. Okay, so you really need to figure out what are the things that are the most important to you regarding the school that you want to attend. I know this sounds real basic, guys, but in some ways, we're going all the way back to the beginning of this process when you were trying to figure out what schools that you were going to apply to. And you know what we've put in our podcasts and in our blogs are things like, well, what are the things that are important to you? How important is a law school's rank to you? The prestige of the school that you attend? How important are finances? Scholarship amount, student loan amount afterwards, especially since we're moving into this era because of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, where student loans, federal student loans at least, are capped at $50,000 per year for graduate and professional students. How important are specific job outcomes? And regarding this one, now is a real time to be honest with yourself about where do you want to be after graduation. And I mean that geographically speaking. This is something I know I'm a big prophet of this. I'm a big proponent of this, to really reflect on where do you want to be after graduation. And I know that many people, at least when they're applying to schools, an answer I get from so many clients I work with or so many people who, I just interact with on a daily basis who are applying to law school. So many people, the answer to the question, well, where do you want to be after graduation? The answer is, I'm totally flexible. And on the one hand, I think what they're trying to convey is there's this, especially in America, there's a sense of, hey, I'll go wherever the job is. You admit me, you give me a job, I'll be there. Okay. And that hints towards an American sense of flexibility and openness, which is great. I think it also reflects a worry on the part of an applicant that, heck, I'm not sure I'm going to get it anywhere. So if anyone takes me, anyone admits me, I'll go to that school. But now that you have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 offers of admission, if they are in different places, then I think it's time to be really critical about, okay, where do I see my future being? So, for example, recently on Reddit, there was a question of someone who's trying to figure out whether to attend St. John's, Miami, or San Diego. Now, all these schools are generally in the same rankings range, 40s, 50s, 60s, okay? But one is in New York, one is in Miami, one is in San Diego. So the postgraduate markets for those schools, outcomes for those schools, are going to be predominantly the New York City area, Florida with a skew towards South Florida, and San Diego / Southern California. These are 3 radically different places to be in after graduation. So where do you want to be? Where are your family? Where are your friends? Do you want to be in a huge city? Do you want to be somewhere where it's warm, most of the time. How do you feel about TV shows beginning at 8 p.m., guys? How do you feel about, gosh, and I know this is one just because of daylight savings hitting us recently. How do you feel about being at the front end of a time zone or the back end of a time zone? Either you're a morning person and the sun's actually going to rise, or you're a night person and you're happy if the sun doesn't go down until 9 or 10 o'clock at night, especially in the summer. I know that's at the low end of things, but again, this honest question being, it's decision time. So, hey, is there a particular job market that you would like to prioritize? And if so, hey, just recognize if you go to Miami, you can pivot into working in Southern California. It's going to be a lot more challenging than if you go to San Diego law. Okay. Regarding finances, that's another place where it's okay to be real honest with yourself at this point. So, what type of law do you foresee yourself practicing? And what are going to be the salary ranges in general for that? So, for example, if you're hoping to practice in corporate law, that typically comes with a higher salary threshold. So, if you need to take on a little more student loans to attend a more prestigious school, but they're more likely to have those types of corporate outcomes, then you're going to probably get the job that's going to help you pay off tons of student loans. On the other hand, if the type of law that you're hoping to practice is one with a slightly lower salary threshold, family law, for example, then does it make sense to take on more student loans in order to attend that more prestigious school? How much money do you have saved up? Do you have any outside support? These are all going to be different factors to consider. But I want to emphasize on that financial aspect of matters, everyone's different. Okay, everyone has a different situation, different career outcomes that they're envisioning, different markets that they're envisioning. So back to geography, it's going to be more expensive to live in New York City than it will be to live in suburban Columbus, Ohio. Okay, and it's going to be a little bit more challenging to finance or to pay off a $200,000 student loan debt on certain positions versus other positions. So again, it's okay to reflect on, well, what do I envision for myself? Okay. And what school will hopefully help me to get to that aspect of matters. But then past those matters, also be sure you're visiting the school, if at all possible. This is where I really recommend it's important to go and see the school in person, because so much of this process can be quantified on a spreadsheet. Like you can put U.S. News rank, you can put above the law rank, you can put tuition figures, scholarship figures, you can put all that on a spreadsheet. But at the end of the day, schools are not an accumulation of stats on a spreadsheet. They are living, breathing institutions. They have their own student vibe. They have their own, the architecture that makes you feel really good or makes you feel kind of meh because they're going for a more brutalist vibe. When you actually see the campus, that either appeals to you or doesn't. And also, I ran into this a lot as the director of admissions at Notre Dame Law School when I served in that position. Notre Dame is a wonderful campus, and the greater South Bend, Indiana area is a really lovely place. I didn't grow up here. I moved here, and I still choose to live in this area. I do understand that for many people, though, northern Indiana is not necessarily a place that immediately inspires, how to put this. It's a little less attractive than, say, Pepperdine on the beaches, or technically they're not on the beaches of Malibu. Pepperdine is on the bluff above the beaches of Malibu. Different vibe, right? But I saw time after time people would come visit the campus, they'd check out town, and they'd find out pretty quickly either, wow, this is something that I wasn't expecting in a really good way, or they'd have the other reaction, hey, it's a great opportunity, it's a great school, but I've kind of confirmed this wouldn't be the best place for me for 3 years. You can't get that sense of things from our brochures or from our website. Although, as an admissions officer, I'm really trying my best to communicate those things to you through those electronic means, those remote means. But really seeing the school in person, really getting a sense for how the students and the faculty and the staff interact with each other, seeing where the students live and seeing that works really well for me. Seeing it in person is worth the cost of the plane ticket or the train ticket, the time off work. It really is important, especially if you frame this as this trip to visit these schools in Chicago will cost me a $400 plane ticket, $500 in hotels. Let's just throw in $200 for foods. That's $1,100. Oh man, that's really expensive. Your student loans are going to be more than that. So you want to make sure before you invest the greater amount that you're really confident on the school. And I'd really, really encourage you to do that. If that's not available, or even if it is, but you just want to supplement that, this is also really the time to network with alumni, to network with current students. And regarding the alumni, I'd really recommend the younger ones because their experiences are going to be closer to what you're going to get from that school than the alums who graduated 20, 30 years ago. So you're doing this for a couple reasons. The first is you are trying to get that vibe check. Are these my people? Because you may view law school as a solitary activity. I'm going to go there. I'm going to take classes. I'm going to write papers. I'm going to get grades. I'm going to get a job and graduate. But the legal profession is really network-based. It's very intertwined. So this is going to be your professional network in the sense of the lawyers that you work with, the lawyers that you work against in a lot of cases. These are going to be the people who recommend you for different jobs or who you recommend for different jobs. This is the primary network, guys. So I think it's a really big question to figure out, like, hey, do I feel like I'm simpatico here with this network? Or do they really just seem on a different wavelength from me? And that's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just, I don't think this is my tribe, okay? And again, especially the younger alums, because they're going to be closer to your network than, or more intertwined in your network than the older folks will be. Okay. And then with the current students, you can also ask them more directly about, hey, tell me what the student organizations are like. Tell me what the student culture is like. Where do people live? Where do people get food afterwards? What are the best coffee shops to study at? They can really give you the lowdown on everything. And again, you can ask yourself, does this sound like my people? Does this sound like the kind of place where I would be really comfortable and would be really happy? Okay. And on that note too, I want you to understand and to remember as you're going through all these subjective matters. So, hey, how important are these different matters to me regarding rank and finances and job outcomes? Where do I want to be? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's really rare for there to be a clear number one choice school. So of the schools I applied to, I was admitted by all my top choices. And now of those top choices, there's a clear winner because they have the highest rank. They are the cheapest because they gave me the best scholarship. They are in the best location, both for 3 years as well as postgraduate opportunities. This network is fantastic. It's clearly the best network. These are clearly my people, and so on and so forth. And that never happens. There's going to be a school where you say, usually it's the highest ranked school I was admitted to gave me the least amount of scholarship, and the reverse is true. The lowest ranked school I was admitted to, they gave me the most scholarship. And man, I really love that school's location. Man, wouldn't it be lovely to go to that school where it's like Southern California? Oh man, 70 degrees every day, sunshine. But I don't think I want to be there long term because all my family's back on the East Coast and don't want to be a whole continent apart from them. So, hey, don't forget that. You're really going to have to compromise here, okay? But trust yourself to make good decisions. Remind yourself that you've been through this a lot already. You had to figure out what schools to apply to. You had to make the decision to go down this law school admissions road and prep for the LSAT and do all this other stuff. And then take a deep breath and then fill out that deposit form and trust yourself. You're going to be just fine, okay? And then really quickly, not only fill out that deposit form, but then if you've been admitted by those other schools, go back to those other schools. And if you're not going to deposit at those schools, officially tell them that you are going to cancel your offer of admission. For many schools, one of two things applies. Either if you go to their deposit form, the first question that they ask is, yes, no, do you accept this offer of admission? And if you click yes, you're then taken to the deposit form and the payment method for paying your deposit and all that stuff. If you click no, on the other hand, it'll then take you to another screen where they basically say, hey, it sounds like you want to cancel your offer of admission. We just want to make sure that you're doing that. If so, sign, click here. No harm, no foul. We appreciate your interest, all that stuff. It's really good to do. Oh, So that's the one thing. The other method is just send them an email that says that you're officially canceling your offer of admission. So, dear Office of Admissions, my name is Jake. Here's my LSIC number. I was really excited and honored to receive an offer of admission. Unfortunately, I've chosen to attend another law school. Just feel like it's a slightly better fit for me. But thank you so much for your consideration and for your offer. I really appreciate it. I would like to officially cancel my offer of admission. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. All the best as you enroll your class for the coming year. Sincerely, Jake Baska. Okay. That's a pretty easy message to send. That's an email to send, not a phone call. You only call them up if you aren't sure how the school wants you to cancel an offer of admission. Okay. But why is it good to tell a school clearly that you are not attending? Because it allows them to have more clear information more quickly regarding how they should pursue waitlist activity. So to put this another way, if you don't tell them that you're coming, that you've deposited by the deposit deadline, I now know you're not coming. That's great. But if you had told me that, like, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, when you knew that you weren't coming because you visited the other school that admitted you, they gave you a better scholarship, you loved the visit, you knew that 2 weeks ago. Heck, maybe I'm doing some scholarship negotiations, and I see that in your little statistical area, man, this person canceled, all these other people have canceled, and this one other person is trying to negotiate their scholarship. Maybe I give them a little more money because I've lost so many people in this area. Okay. Or I'm now past the deposit deadline, and now I know, gosh, we underperformed in this statistical area. I need to pursue some waitlist activity for people on the waitlist who are in that statistical area. So effectively, there's that aspect of matters. I would also argue this. In life, you are going to be invited to a lot of different events. Okay, so for example, you're going to be invited to weddings and graduations and birthday parties. And an implicit social contract of that offer of attending is, hey, RSVP, let me know if you're coming. Let me know if you're not coming. Okay, so that way I know how much food, how big of a room I need to rent for this party, things like that. This is one of those times. So if you know you're not coming, just reach out, cancel your offer of admission, and you're all good. And then briefly, I mentioned maybe submitting a deposit to more than one school. This would be appropriate if you just really, really, really cannot make up your mind and there are two schools who are the clear choice. It is reasonably okay to do that. You'll notice I caught my words there because there are a number of schools that make clear in their admit letter that if you deposit at that school, they politely ask that you not deposit at other schools. They're asking that because they want to be fair to the candidates who are on their wait list. So for example, if I want to enroll 200 students, and if 200 students end up depositing at my school before my deposit deadline, on the surface, I may think, man, yes, we nailed it. We were looking for 200, we got 200. But if 50 of those 200 are deposited at 2 or more other schools, then how many of them are actually going to attend my school at the end of the day? I mean, maybe all 50, and I have to assume all 50. But man, I know in my heart it's not going to be all 50. But as I look to the wait list, how many should I admit? What stats do we need to take into account as we pursue waitlist activity, or what demographics should we take into account? I don't know that. So that's why schools sometimes make that request to not double deposit. But if a school doesn't explicitly say, you shall not have an active deposit at another school, you can assume it's okay. I would professionally encourage you, though, really take depositing seriously. And I know you will. But take it seriously. And also, depositing at 2 schools and having 2 active deposits in April and in May, yeah, that's okay. That's okay. If we're talking about 3 or 4 or 5 active deposits, that's usually a sign of you just can't make that call. And I'm really sure you can winnow, you can take that 5th school away, you can take that 4th school away. And also the reason why I mentioned April and May is because we come to second deposit deadlines, typically June 1st, June 15th, Memorial Day weekend-esque. And at that point, schools do expect that this means you are coming, that you are planning to enroll in this coming academic year unless something arises, such as being pulled off the wait list at another school, a personal emergency, family emergency, an amazing job offer that materialized out of nowhere, something like that pops up. But otherwise, you're going to be here in August for orientation. So it's okay to have most schools are going to give you a little bit of grace in April and May. There's going to be less grace in June, certainly July, certainly August. So the earlier you can make this decision, it's better for the schools, but it's also better for you too, because if you're deposited at 2 or 3 schools, where should you be apartment hunting? Where should you be looking for roommates? Where should you be driving that U-Haul van to? The earlier you can make that decision for yourself, hey, the better you're going to be, and the more clear that you can be about that, about organizing your life for the coming year. And you can really start getting excited about things like getting that apartment, getting that roommate, starting to buy law school swag, really diving in again to that network over the course of the summer. And what's great about that is if you network over the summer, you'll already have some friends in the 2L and 3L classes when you arrive for law school in August. You're also going to have a head start on the job search process for your 1L summer. So everyone comes out ahead there. But I just want to acknowledge, you'll hear a little bit of this on Reddit. And hey, again, if you need to double deposit in April, May, for most schools, that's reasonably okay. But just keep those other matters in mind. Okay, and on that note, I think this is a great place to wrap up things for today's episode. So I want to thank you all for listening and for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe. And until next time, we wish you all the best on your law school applications and also, importantly, on your deposit decision. Good luck, everyone.